episode 9.
Us too.
All right, well, this is one where we're gonna need alcohol, actually, so
Yes.
What do we do first?
Well, we're gonna fucking... There's my crack. Crack a claw, y'all. Yes, this episode. First, we'd like to give a little disclaimer.
Yeah, we want to give a little bit of a content warning. So today, we are talking about sexual assault, and this is a topic that needs to be talked about. It affects so many of us. And it also can be difficult and really activating if you are a survivor. Today, Reyna and I are going to talk about our stories. We will not be going into, obviously, graphic detail, but we are going to talk about what it's like to have experienced assault, to be a survivor, and to work toward recovery. So as you're listening, if you find yourself becoming activated or upset, we want to really encourage you to step away, take a break, take care of yourself, come back to it when you're ready. If you're ready, we'll be here.
We will be here.
But we got to talk about these things, or else shame will get inside us and continue to create the cycles of abuse that perpetuate themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so deep breath.
Okay. Ready to get into it?
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, one thing I did want to start out with is just some statistics to really highlight what an actual, like, public health epidemic rape and sexual assault are. And I think a lot of times it's thought of as just, quote unquote, just a women's issue. It's actually an everyone issue.
It is.
And we have an epidemic of sexual assault in this country. Every 73 seconds, a person in America is sexually assaulted.
Shit.
Yeah. 1 in 6 women will experience or have experienced sexual assault in their lifetimes. 1 in 10 men will as well. And I actually think that this is an issue where we really have to talk about the fact that this does happen to men because it doesn't get talked about and it causes them a lot of harm.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking to a man today, but I do just want to acknowledge up front that men can be assaulted too by other men and other women. And it fucks them up.
Yes.
And then I also just wanted to, I guess, mention that, like, when we think about who's the highest risk in this country, trans women and indigenous women are, like, assaulted at ridiculously disproportionate rates, and it's just something that feels important to acknowledge. We're sharing our stories today. We are not members of those communities, but I just want to name and acknowledge the high risk that trans women and indigenous women are at for sexual assault, so we can all kind of think about, like, our role in ending this epidemic and creating a culture of consent.
Yes.
So
thank you, Megan.
Yeah, I don't know. It's also, like, a trauma therapist, as we've talked about, and I actually only work with assault survivors, so that's where I get kind of, like, into this piece. But I wanted to share that so that we could enter in, and listeners can enter in, like, really thinking about how often this happens.
Yes.
Which is horrible.
Horrible, and also, like, if it's happened to you, you're not alone with this.
Not at all. And something that is so difficult about the experience, about experiencing a sexual assault or a rape, is you feel really alone. It's really, really isolating.
Yeah.
And we carry the shame that belongs to the perpetrator. We carry the shame that belongs to the person that caused us harm, but because of the way that society is structured, it's our fault, we were asking for it, all of that shit. So you wind up carrying that with you and feeling like you're the only one, and unfortunately the statistics I just shared,
no,
you're not.
And 2 of the women that are here today, yeah. So
2 out of 2 in this
2
sample
out of 2.
size.
Yes.
We're gonna have, we were actually talking before the episode how Reyna and I both mask pain with humor and minimizing.
Minimizing is a biggie one, yeah.
We're gonna try not to do that in this episode, but if there are points where we're, like, laughing at something, it's not because we take this lightly, it's because that's a survival strategy that both of us have created for ourselves over the years.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't know, is there anything you want to say in our, like, kind of just entering into the topic, or?
I mean, I just want to acknowledge that it's going to be a tough episode, you know, and, but I think, we both think it's super important to have this conversation, to have space for this conversation, and share our stories, because we do walk in this world and people may look at us a certain way. Like, I'm not blind to how I may come across to people, or we may come across to people, but I think it's so important to know, no matter what somebody may look like on the outside or what you may think about them, they have a fucking story, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And just to, you know, think about that too. Like, you don't know what goes on in people's heads. You don't know somebody's story fully. So we're all in this together.
Yeah. As
we go through this life journey and this episode.
We are
fucking in it.
I think the other thing that I will say is I am multiple decades away from my first assault, which was at the age of 14, and my second, which was at the age of 19.
Mm-hmm.
And have done work to process it, we'll talk about, but what I want to say up front is that recovery is possible. So if you are in the depths of this right now and you feel like, God damn it, I have to live with this forever, like this will always be with me, this has changed me fundamentally, yeah, it's changed you. And healing is possible, recovery is possible, finding your way back to the core of you is possible. Mm-hmm. It just takes time, and it takes breaking the silence, which is what we're doing today.
Yeah, because time, I mean, again, time is all relative, but to speak to what you were saying, mine is decades away as well. I was 14 years old, but it's still...
we were both 14 the first time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. We were both 14 at a time of an assault.
Yes.
There you go. Sorry.
No, that's okay. But but again, time is all relative, and so that assault or that memory can like feel like it was fucking happening right this second. You know. So we're very cautious of that. I am aware of that. It's a healing process. There's never like an ending or a destination to this. It's just getting, you know, like every day is a new day, and we deal with it as it comes, you know.
Yeah. And what we're going to talk about today are like some of the bigger ones. It's not even to mention all the times my ass has been grabbed in public, or my boob has been grabbed in public, or the time that I've seen penises I didn't want to see by like I remember it like being like 9 years old at the public library in my hometown in the children's section, and like seeing a man masturbating.
Oh my God.
I mean, I don't count that as an assault per se, but that's something.
Still like disturbing.
It's horrible. I just ran and told my mom. So like, we're not even talking about all of those like I don't know, micro assaults today, but that shit happens all the time too.
All the time. The cat calling, the fucking ass grabbing, the like, all of it. There's a lot that us women and men and people in general just have to go through, you know. But today we're going to be talking specifically about
rape and sexual assault.
Rape and sexual assault. Yes, let's name it.
All right. I know it's a hard
we're
word
talking about
to
it.
say.
Yeah.
But it has to be, I think it has to be said.
Yeah. Yes.
So, all right, what do you feel like is the way into our stories? Do you want to trade them off? Do you want to go first? How do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind talking about mine. Let's just talk about it, shall we?
Yeah. So you were 14.
I was 14.
What happened?
I was 14, and I was with my friends, and we went to this 20-year-old's house. I was literally in 9th grade. We went to some guy's house that my friend was dating, who was 20. Fucking dark, dude.
20-year-old dude.
Yeah.
I mean, like, dudes that aren't teenagers don't hang out with please don't.
Please fucking don't. So my friend was dating this 20-year-old. We all went over to his fucking apartment. He had a friend there. And, yeah, I was 14. We were smoking. We were drinking. You know, I was getting attention from his friend. I liked it. You know, I was like, oh, I'm, you know, because he was hot, you know. He was 19. I remember he was 19. And, you know, I'm not going to go into any graphics or whatever, but, oh my God, am I going to actually say this out loud? Fuck. So that was the night that I lost my virginity. And I will say that I lost it.
Yeah.
That I didn't choose to lose it. And I actually said no a few times. But for some reason, and it wasn't, how I wanted to lose my virginity. This is not what I wanted. I was really inebriated at the time. Again, I was a kid, and my friends were in the room with us, and I didn't even know until the next day that it was rape.
Yeah. First, I just want to check in and see how you're doing right now.
No, I'm okay. I was just like, oh God, am I really going to say this out loud?
Yeah.
Because it's taken me a long time to like
To
admit
name it.
that it was rape.
I think I know that's really common.
Yeah.
Like there's this idea that to be raped or to be assaulted is to be like snatched off the street by a stranger and brutalized. That happens, but really it's something like 85-ish% of rapes and sexual assaults happen from someone you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like quote unquote date rapes, which I hate that term.
Yeah.
Like let's not like dress it up.
Right.
You know? And so it's really, I have an experience that I didn't realize was a rape until like a year later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was
really
literally
disorienting.
Yeah. I mean, literally this was 26 years ago, and I'm still like coming to terms with like admitting that that's what it was, because I felt like I asked for it, or because I wanted to mess, because I did mess around with him, but I didn't want to fucking, nobody would choose to lose their virginity in that manner, and I didn't, and I said no, and my friends even heard me say no, and they're the ones that brought it up to me the next day, saying, Reyna, like, no, you said no, we were there, and I'm like, yeah, but, you know, and I think, what it was a lot. It was a lot. I didn't know the fucking guy, but I don't know if I wanted to admit it. I did what I always do, which was minimize things. At the point in my life at that time was not a good time in my life, period. Mm-hmm. And everybody was minimizing everything else around me, and not. So it was just there's a lot of other things going on at the time. But bottom line is, if somebody told me this story, this is what my therapist told me. Like, if somebody came to me and told me this story of how they lost their virginity, what would I say to them? Like, would this be rape? And I'm like, fuck yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, you said no, and you're on your fucking period. Like, who the fuck wants to lose their virginity like that, you know? But it wasn't, again, like, it wasn't physical. It wasn't like he hit me. It wasn't like he pinned me down. But I was out of my mind. I was drunk and fucking high, and
there's so much there. I personally don't think a 14-year-old can consent to physical intimacy with a 20-year-old anyway.
Yeah.
Just because of the power differential with that kind of age difference at that age. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, like, I'm 37. Can I date someone 6 years older than me now and consent? Yeah, I'm 37. My prefrontal cortex is fully formed. Mm-hmm. It's so different. Yeah. When you're 14 to 20, that's like different lifetimes, and you were inebriated, and you said no. But it's so funny how like the society puts into your head, which I'm not saying this is what you think now, but just like that thought of like, but I was flirting with him.
Yes.
Like I did want to make out.
With him.
Of course he wanted to make out. Like teenagers want to make out with people. That's like kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
But that is not like, a kiss is not blanket consent for anything
Right.
else that somebody wants to make happen or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember saying that I was a virgin and I didn't want to do this. And, but fucking did it somehow, some way. I mean, I do remember, no matter how fucking fucked up I was, I remember every single second of it. Yeah. That's how fucking, like, gross it is, you know? That's what shit can do. Like, it can, like I can literally feel it like it happened yesterday.
Isn't
you know,
crazy?
26 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and like, fuck that motherfucker now, you know, like, who the fuck is this sick fuck, you know, like, now I'm getting mad, you know, like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of thinking it was me as a little girl and, oh, just, you know, having sex with a 19-year-old, you know, I'm really cool, you know, and we even went back to that house, like, a few weeks later, and that's just the shit that goes on in your head, you know, like, you know, I don't know, it was very confusing, and I was confused for a very long time.
Yeah.
But I'm, like, literally processing in real time right now. I'm not confused anymore by it. Like, that's a horrible thing for somebody, like, if I'm looking outside of myself, it's a horrible way for a little girl, 14 years old, to lose her virginity.
Yeah.
You know?
How does it feel to be able to just say that, like, without apologizing or coming up with an excuse for what happened?
It's so freeing.
Yeah.
Like, there is no question in my mind right now of just how, like, no, that was fucking wrong. You know? It was wrong, and, like, I'm talking to myself, third person. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong, Reyna. You know, there was nothing wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong. It was not your fault. And, yeah. Like, it's just so freeing just to, like, admit that it wasn't my fault, you know?
Yeah. And to believe it. To be able to say it to yourself. Because you can hear that from other people. And sometimes I think it's, like, not even a helpful thing to hear from other people.
Yeah.
But when you reach a point where you say that to yourself and you believe it's true, that is, like, a real high water mark.
It is, because you know what? I fucking deserved more than that.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
That's why.
I'm really mad at this person. Well, I guess the listeners don't all know. You know how protective I am of my friends and of you, and the things I want to say right now that I'm not going to, because it's not about him, it's about you.
Yeah, and I fucking
you
deserved more than that. I was worthy of more than that. So, yeah. That's why I'm so sure of it now, because that's why for so long I wasn't so sure, because I didn't know if I was worthy enough of a lot of things. But I know for a fact I was, like, worthy of, like, having my first time be with somebody that cared about me, or that I cared about, you know?
And that you chose.
That I chose. Yeah, that I said yes to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, see, fucking 26 years later, here we are, like, what is fucking time, you know? Like, shit. Okay, I'm gonna, like, take a breather. Megan, you want to share your story?
I love you.
I love you too.
Yeah. Well, so for me, I have two. The first time I was assaulted, I was 14 years old. Also by a person older than me, 18.
Sorry, gross older motherfucker.
I don't know. Sorry to cough into the microphone. And it was similarly confusing. When I was young, I was really into theater, like really into, like, acting. And so I was taking a summer acting class, and this boy was in it, and I was an inexperienced 14-year-old. We've talked before about how I was, like, gawky and weird at looking and whatever until I was in 8th grade, and this was the summer after 9th grade. And I was just starting to, like, kind of figure out how to be comfortable in my body a little bit, but still was not. I had had, like, 2 boyfriends who I just kissed, like, very innocent, very naive, very curious. Super wanted to make out. Yeah. Because I was 14 and 14-year-olds
making out.
want to make out. And this guy kind of, like, checked all the boxes. Like, he
So he was a senior?
He I think had just graduated from high school. Like, he drove a motorcycle, and he liked the Ramones, and he liked the Dead Kennedys, and he played the guitar, and he wrote horrible, if you're listening, you wrote horrible poetry. But my little 14-year-old self was like, this is so deep, he's so deep. So I had like a big crush on him.
Yeah.
And we became friends, and then like would hang out on our lunch breaks, and like this all developed like fast, because that is also what like people grooming children do. Like they move fast, and like it would and like ramp up the emotional intensity. So within I think like 2 or 3 weeks of being in the class, like we would like go and eat our lunch together and like make out. And without going into too much detail, there was one lunch break where we were in the backstage area at the theater. I thought we were just gonna like smooch a little bit and go and eat lunch, but that's not what happened. And I was put into a closet that I couldn't get out of. My clothes were taken away and wouldn't be given back until some things happened. And I didn't know what to do. So I did what was being quote unquote asked, like what I was.
When people were there, like outside of the closet, I mean.
No,
you were at school.
It was at the Arizona Theater Company.
Oh, okay.
So people would like disperse into like downtown Tucson to go get their lunch. So like we were backstage in one of the dressing rooms basically, and there was nobody around.
Okay.
So I'm just like shoved into this space, and it was kind of one of those like the only way out is through situations. I definitely didn't consent. Like I definitely was like, I really don't want to do this. But in my head, I also was like, I would like to get out of this closet.
Yeah.
And the doors being blocked, I'm not strong. Let's just get this over with. And then it was a mind fuck, because we went back from lunch and back to rehearsal. And I just like
had to pretend.
I think that's probably the first time in my life that I just completely disassociated.
Yeah.
And then I didn't tell anybody, and actually this guy wound up getting me into trouble to the extent that like we were both kicked out of that class, and then I never saw him again. But
you never saw him again?
A couple weeks later we did something. A couple weeks later we did something where we got in like pretty big trouble with the theater company, and we were like drinking on our lunch break, and like a lot of not great things happened on our lunch break apparently. Got caught, got in trouble, got kicked out of the company, got kicked out of the play. And then like obviously I was in enormous trouble and was not allowed to ever see him again. It's like hard to breathe when I think about it. But I had no like understanding of what happened. I just knew that I felt really bad and really ashamed about it. And then it was fast forward almost a year, I'm in my first like what became a serious relationship with my high school sweetheart. And I would have these like really intense emotional reactions to any physical touch, making out, snuggling, anything. And finally one day I just blurted out, I was like, this is what happened to me last summer. I'm such a whore. And because I didn't know what it was. I just felt disgusting. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and just said, no, what happened to you that day was total rape. Like my high school boyfriend was the first person to name it. And I was like, oh, that's why I feel so bad. And for a long, long, long time, he was the only person who knew. Having somebody who loved me name it for me and talk to me about it, and then also be like, we don't have to do anything. Like, we can just hold hands. Like, he was so great about it. Well, he had been my best friend for years beforehand, but something about like that in and of itself was so healing. It's the perfect way for like friends and family to respond, which we'll talk about later. But like blurting it out and having somebody be like, oh my God, like that wasn't okay. You're not bad. What do you need? Like, let's just lightly hold hands if that's all that you're comfortable with. That in and of itself was like really healing. And then I worked on it more in therapy as an adult. When I remember when I started therapy in my early 30s, telling that story, totally minimizing it to my therapist, and he was like, yeah, that's at least sexual assault, quote unquote, at least, but like rape, and also like you weren't old enough to consent to any physical acts with an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And then the second time, like much shorter story, much more straightforward. I was in college, met this guy at my work. We went out on a few dates, slept at his house, like went to his apartment one night, got too drunk to drive home and spent the night. And then in the middle of the night woke up and sex was happening.
Oh.
And then I was like, oh, what are you doing? Stop. And he did stop when I said to stop, but I never said to start.
Yeah.
But in that instance, I just like disassociated, went to sleep, drove home. I didn't see him again for years, and it never really registered to me that, like, I remember feeling upset and weird the next day. But in my head, I was like, well, I probably would have slept with him anyway. Like, that's just not how I would have done it. Like, I just was like, I don't know, this is weird, put it away.
Yeah.
And then years later, I ran into him. That was when I was 19. I ran into him out in Phoenix when I was 22, and this disgusting motherfucker comes up to me and says, hey girl. First of all, don't ever say hey girl. And I was like, oh, hey. And he had the audacity to say, I miss having sex with you.
Ew!
And which is gross. Just like none of that is good. Like, even if you have had consensual sex with someone, if you're seeing them for the first time in 4 years, that's not the move.
No.
But I looked at him and I was like, and at first in my head I was like, did we even have sex? And then I remembered what happened, and everything just like, do you ever have things just like click into focus in your brain?
Yes.
It was like chick, 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 and I can't believe this came out of my mouth. But I looked at him dead ass in the eyes and was like, we didn't have sex, you raped me.
Oh, fuck.
And he was like, what? And then I like just walked away. But
Good for you.
But like, here's the terrifying thing. He didn't know he raped me.
Oh God.
You know, like that's in his.
Yeah.
That's the thing that is so scary, and that's why I think we need to be careful about like, oh, it was just a date rape, or it was just this.
Right.
When it's like, no, like
nothing is just, okay.
And this person, he was very privileged. He was rich. He was
a fucking Brock Turner.
Lived in Scottsdale. No concept that like people have like feelings and emotions outside of him.
That just totally reminded me of that show This May Destroy You, when she like was on the podium and she's like, this motherfucker raped me.
Oh my God, I had such a big reaction to that. This is probably why, like, now I'm figuring out, and really poor my partner and I watched that together, and in that moment I was like vibrating with feeling some type of way. Of course, like, my partner is like wonderfully supportive. I think he was just like, this is like really affecting her. But I was like vibrating with rage. But like, that is, in that moment, it all clicked into focus, and I was like, that's what happened.
To call somebody out on their shit.
So weird. Yeah. Then I just walked away, and then he was around at this place that my friends used to DJ for a while, until I told one of them like, hey, he's dangerous, and then they kind of made it known to him he couldn't come around. But he was like, you have to stop telling people that I did that. And I was like, but you did. Like, you have to stop talking to me now.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, and don't fucking tell me anything. Like, ew.
But yeah, so I mean, those were my experiences, and in both cases, I didn't realize that that's what had happened. Yeah. Until in the first case, someone named it for me, and in the second case, till like years later, when like it clicked into my head and I realized it. And I feel like that is common. So,
I mean, I was just literally saying 26 years later, here I am like, yes, it was, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's so important to identify and acknowledge, because it's like, it's okay to process these things in any sort of manner, any whatever, you know what I mean? If you come to this realization later on, like, it's still what is true, you know. And that's why I hate this bullshit of like, you know, and I can't remember who it was, some political guy, and she was talking about, she came on to the stand and talked about what he did to her.
Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court.
And I don't care if it was when it was or how it was, or if you just now coming to the realization of what it was. Like, your body and your mind will do things to protect you.
Yeah.
And it won't let you believe these things, right? Because it's literally meant to help you survive. Your mind is there to help you survive, and it'll protect you. It'll shut shit down. It'll have you disconnect. It'll like have you not remember certain things, you know. So how you process things, or when you process it, or when you realize what has happened, like it's fucking okay. Like that's okay. Like you don't need to. Again, like literally, we're both saying the same thing right here. Is it took us, you know,
years
to like really name like what had happened and the impact of it.
Yeah.
You know. Thank you for sharing your stories.
Yeah. It's a lot. I've done a lot of work in therapy. I've done EMDR on both of these things. I've done a lot of work.
Yeah.
I don't feel like either of them were my fault. I don't feel shame about them anymore. But I do still feel sad when I think about 14-year-old me and 19-year-old me.
Yes, it is
and when
sad.
I think about it for sure impacted me in terms of feelings of self-worth and perception of like safety and with intimacy. Weirdly, like it impacted me more with like emotional intimacy than physical intimacy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I've worked through those things, but it had an impact for a while, for sure.
I mean, it does. I mean, you don't, especially given your two scenarios or your two experiences, were with people that you knew and that you cared about, that you liked.
Yeah, had crushes on.
Yeah, and then they totally like
threw me away like garbage.
Did that shit to you.
Treated me like a urinal. That's how I felt for
and
a
so
long
of
time.
course, like it's going to be difficult with an emotional connection more so than a physical one. You know, we can all. That's the same with me. Like I can be physical. Well, no, I can't. I mean, I have a lot of shit. But when like I have a hard time with emotional too, you know. Yeah. But like physical, like I get flashbacks a lot, you know, because I don't know, you know, there was a story that I shared on our Instagram, you know, about our babysitters when I was 4 or 5 years old, you know, and that was a thing. That was my first introduction to like sex and being close to a boy, you know, like, and I honestly do not remember if anything happened in that sleeping bag. And I don't know if that my mind is blocking me out or if nothing happened. Like I don't know, and I may never know, and that's okay. Yeah. I just know that it wasn't fucking okay. It wasn't right. You know what I mean? I was fucking 5, and they're teenage boys, and there's just been a lot of throughout my life, throughout my childhood, you know, sex was like. It was interesting because we had the whole sex episode, right? And I'm very curious, and I've always been a very curious little girl, and like really sexual. And you know, I may even liked that time when I was 5 years old, like these boys, like, you know, like you get crushes on boys,
yes. And it's on the teenage boy to know, like, oh my god, this 5-year-old has a crush on me. This is so like embarrassing. I need to make sure I have like a good boundary about it.
And like you don't realize this until later how fucked up shit was, right? And then but I don't say that anything. Who knows? I don't know. I was always curious, and you know, I don't know where I'm going with this.
Well, I think a big issue is that we are not taught about boundaries or consent. We're not taught that in sex education. I mean, I know I was in high school a long time ago. Maybe sex education has changed in the state I grew up in. I doubt it has. But we're not taught about, like, bodily autonomy. Think about it, even as kids. Like, if you go over to a relative's house and, like, you don't feel like giving your grandpa a hug that day. Right. Not because your grandpa's creepy or anything. Like, you just don't feel like it. And then you're like, come on, give grandpa a hug. Like, give auntie a hug. Like, coerced into letting adults hug you, which is benign, except that it teaches you that you do not get to have a say over
Right.
what happens to your body.
Yeah.
Like, we're programmed from a young age that we don't have bodily autonomy, that it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
People who are, boys or assigned, like, male at birth are not taught about asking permission, asking consent. I remember, oh my God, when I started dating again after my last long relationship a couple of years ago, a couple of people I went on dates with asking if it was okay to kiss me, and me being like, my first reaction being like, oh my God, don't ask, that's not sexy at all, grab me and fucking kiss me. And then being like, oh no, that's my bad programming. Like, no, like, how cool that I was asked if that is something that would be okay. You know? So, like, there are people out there that clearly have been taught about consent who are careful and thoughtful and, like, sensitive, but the majority of people aren't, and like, we're taught that we don't get to have a say over what happens to our bodies.
That's so true, and it's more so like making sure the other person feels comfortable.
Yes,
and it's like, what about? Well, I don't feel comfortable though.
Like, God, I used to just do back bends, not literally because I'm not flexible, but like, such mental gymnastics to like make other people comfortable, especially in romantic situations, at the expense of what I felt like I wanted to do or what I think would feel good. And I have to believe that it in some way goes back to these early experiences where, like, the message I got is like, you don't have a say and you're not worth very much, and I want something from you and I'm gonna get it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's some sort of programming that happens back then, especially as a child, when you're like a fucking sponge and you suck everything up, and it literally every time is your first time, and so first impressions make a big impact. We all know that. So it's like hard to get over your first. We all remember our first. It's hard to like change that, change your thought process around what that meant for you at the time. But yeah, I mean, growing up, I won't talk a lot about this here, but I was abused as a child, sexually abused as a child, and whether or not that played a role into how I handled, it had to play a role of how I handled being treated when I was 14 years old by somebody taking my virginity. You know what I mean? About minimizing what just happened. Because I was taught to minimize that for so fucking long. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? This happens.
That became a survival strategy.
Yeah.
Like freeze or fawn.
Yeah. Because I was 14 and my abuse happened for many years before then. That was like the year that went to shit.
A lot happened.
That everything kind of came out, but the abuse was throughout a lot of my childhood years. But it was, I was taught to minimize those things, or those things weren't important, or what I was saying wasn't valid, or nothing was going to be done about it. So why the fuck would I think anything would be done about what this dude was fucking like that, And even, so I think that all has to do with it too, is again, like, the impact of other people's shit, of like making other people feel comfortable and at ease with this very uncomfortable topic of sexual abuse, of sexual assault, of rape, when you're like, but wait, I'm the victim here. Like, this happened to me. Like, so why the fuck do you feel so uncomfortable with this shit?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's important for people to hear. And there's something I want to say, if we can think about, like, what we've learned, like, our journey to, like, healing and recovery, things that help. The first thing I want to say to, like, any survivor is that you did everything right in those moments to survive, to get out of there alive. However you responded, whatever your body did, whatever you said, whether you fought or didn't fight, like, you made a series of choices based on the situation to stay alive, and good for you.
Yeah. And
good for you.
Fucking function.
It wasn't, it was not your fault.
No.
And your story is yours, which is like sort of cliche to say, but like there is something about being able to claim the story, to unpack it, to like construct a narrative about what happened that isn't like I did something wrong or I asked for it, but I did what I needed to do to survive it, and I'm still here and I'm still standing, and I have a future that I still get to, I have a present and a future that I still get to live in, be present in, and create for myself.
Yes.
Regardless of what choices you made before, during, or after, whatever those choices were, they were the right ones.
They were. Thank you.
You know,
for
like
saying
that's
that.
what, and I think that people don't realize that. Like I will talk with clients sometimes. I'm like, whatever you did before, during, and after were the right choices to keep you alive, to keep you surviving at the time. Period. The only person that did something wrong is the person who caused you harm.
Yes.
Let's stop carrying their shame for them. Let's give it to who it belongs, the person who harmed you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for saying that, because it's so fucking true. You know? Like, I sometimes, like, beat myself up about the way that what I didn't do or did do or say or didn't say, or how I was a fucking drug addict, you know, like all of the fucking things, you know, but I'm just like, I did whatever the fuck I need. Like, here I am today.
Yes. When I think sometimes, well, and this is why many people don't report. I didn't report either of those, obviously.
I didn't either. Neither did my mom.
It didn't occur to me. That's awful.
Yeah.
And in my case, like, there wouldn't have, like, quite frankly, like, there wouldn't have been any evidence to even open an investigation with, like, at all.
Yeah.
Because the criminal, quote-unquote, justice system is trash, but that's probably another episode anyway.
Yeah.
Like, where was I going with that?
But you didn't report. I didn't report about my 14-year-old. Right.
And then and I know some people who have, and have been asked by the police, like, well, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you this or that?
Oh,
and that's where I always go back to that, because you did what you needed to do to make it out alive.
Yes.
What if you had fought? You don't know what would
I
happen to you.
have no idea.
Enormous physical harm could have come to you.
Yes. He was a big guy.
You made the choices you needed to make to survive the moment and get to the next.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, same with you.
Yeah.
You know?
So
and
weird.
It's just like, yeah, and thank you. I mean, I just really appreciate you saying that, because it just makes me, I don't know. And for anybody listening, like, be kind to yourself. Like,
yes.
You did what you had to do, and here we are. Like, here we fucking are. Here you are listening to us. We are speaking about this, like, and it happened a long time ago, and it's still a healing process. Every you know, not every day, but I'm like, when it comes up, yeah, there's a lot of shit still there. You know?
For me, I think it's mostly when I'm watching shows like I Will Destroy You, and then I just get mad.
Yeah.
Because I'm like the scene where the guy takes off the condom while he's having sex.
Yes!
With her. I was like, oh, cool, he's raping her now. Like, she didn't consent to that.
Yeah.
There's just, and this is, we're going to do next season a whole episode on building a consent culture, like, with an actual sex educator, because that's what I mean. Like, people don't understand, like, in I Will Destroy You, Arabella consented to have sex with him with a condom. The moment he removed it, she was no longer consenting to the experience that was happening.
Right.
But people don't, there's not a cultural understanding that, like, consent is, I've agreed to this under these circumstances. Yeah. Also, I can revoke my consent at any point, but you don't get to, like, sneak behind my back and change the circumstances of what I have agreed to do with my body.
Especially, it's like, I agree to safe sex, motherfucker. Yes. I agree to not having a fucking baby, motherfucker. Yeah. I agree to not having a fucking STD. Yeah. Like, that shit pissed me off when I saw him take his condom off.
I was so mad.
Like, oh, so sorry it doesn't feel the same with the condom on. You know what I mean?
Then
like,
have that conversation up front and let her decide.
Exactly. Don't just do it behind her back and just like
literally
now she has to fucking. I know. And then she has to fucking buy Plan B and like deal with that shit. You know,
which
like
that fucks you up.
Yes, it does. Like,
yeah,
it's a whole thing. It fucking pisses me off.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, consent is very, very, very important, and it's very nuanced, and it's so much more. It's not like, yes, I said let's have sex, so now anything that you want to do to me during this interaction is okay.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. And it's okay to just. It's just okay to just stop too.
It's also okay to say like if this hurts, or like that's happened before, and like
I don't like. Yeah, it hurts.
Like this doesn't feel right. Like, can we just stop it? Can we just stop it? I'm lucky that like in times when I have said that to a partner, like they're always like, "Oh, thank you for telling me." Like, you know, these days I'm sleeping with people that like don't want to have sex with me if it hurts or doesn't feel good. So like they would like to know that information instead of just getting through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that we need to teach we need to teach consent in developmentally appropriate ways from a really young age.
Absolutely. And like even though I've been with my partner for 16 years, it's still consent is still very fucking valid. Yes. You know?
Oh yeah, it's not just
yeah.
Oh, this is, I think about women.
It's not like I have to do it because we're together, or like we owe each other something, or I owe him something, or it's been a week, we have to have sex now. You know, like
the laws
I can't do that.
The laws around marriage, like women of like my grandmother's generation, like were raped in their marriages all the time, but like it was like, well, you agreed to get married, so that means blanket consent for whenever your husband wants to get it in. Like there were like the laws around like being raped by your married partner are like new, and actually not in every state.
Damn,
because that's how little our bodily autonomy matters.
Oh,
disgusting. Okay, let's talk a bit, because we've said a few times, like, healing's possible, recovery's possible.
Yes.
Is there anything that you want to share about, like, what's been helpful for you in processing these experiences and, like, healing those wounds?
You know, honestly, what's helped me the most, like, the most, is finally talking about it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't talk about it for so long.
Yeah.
So I started talking about it in therapy, and then I started talking about it to my friends, to Sergio, and that has helped me. If you're surrounded by the right ones, you know, they will listen and they will help guide you, and they will remind you that one, it's not your fault, and two, you're so fucking worthy of more than that shit. So that's what's helped me the most, is like just like opening up my mouth and saying something.
Same. Breaking the silence was huge for me. Talking about it in therapy, receiving support from people that were just like, that was wrong, you didn't deserve it, you are so enough. And then I think another way I've found healing over the years is like in relationships, being able to say like, this is something that has happened to me, and I've been lucky in long-term relationships having partners that are like, that's horrible, but I don't think you're broken. Because that is something I always, like, I have worried about in the past, not even in my 30s, but in my 20s, like, not wanting to be seen as, like, damaged goods. But I think I've found healing similarly through talking about it, and through relationships with people who are kind and treat me with respect, and who ask for consent, friendships and romantic relationships. And, like, my current partner is, like, I've never felt more safe with somebody.
Oh, good.
Teary-eyed thinking about that.
Oh,
but
I love that.
You know, it is just possible if you're able to break the silence and get some support, to find your way to people who respect you and see you as whole, and who understand that what's happened to you is not you. your personality. It's not the defining characteristic of you.
No. And also, to add to that, they can see more so of your choices or your behaviors or your patterns or your thought patterns of why you react the way you do sometimes or get triggered by certain things. So just opening up that conversation just also helps them, like, oh, so that's why you were, that's why this happened, or this is why you were sad, or, why we didn't have sex that night, you know what I mean? And it's like, yes, so communication is fucking huge, and if you're with people that you trust, I encourage you to just communicate with them, because they want you to be happy and they want to love you and they do love you. But they also need to know what you need from them.
That is true. You got to communicate what's needed.
Yeah.
I will say too, if you are the friend or a family member of someone who has survived a rape or an assault and they disclose to you, first of all, remember that it's an incredible honor, because they trust you enough with this thing that they for sure feel shame about. So it's extremely, it's emotionally distressing to receive that information, to learn that this has happened to someone you love. But in that moment, you cannot make it about how you feel about knowing. You have to make it about the person who's disclosing.
Yes.
So whatever you need to do to ground, get calm, to take the information in, to be curious about their needs, that is so essential. So if you have this big emotional reaction, they're going to feel more shame, and you're also then requiring them to do emotional labor for you to comfort you. Right. So that's just something important to know if you have a friend or family member disclose. And then the other thing is, you do deserve support. It's extremely upsetting to find out. And there are resources out there for friends and family of assault survivors. A good place to start is the RAINN website. Oh yeah,
RAINN.
Always makes me think of Tori Amos, because she did ads for them in the 90s.
I don't even know.
There's great resources on RAINN for survivors and friends and family.
Wait, is it 2 N's?
It is, yeah.
RAINN.
N, yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Okay.
We'll post it in the show notes, and we'll share stuff on our social media when this comes out as well. But that's a great resource. You deserve support if this has happened to you, and you deserve support if this has happened to a friend or family member. It's just so important that you respond calmly to the disclosure, so that you don't inadvertently create more shame or emotional labor for the person. And I just wanted to share that, because it's it's counter to us as emotional beings, but it is actually extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, because then you make it about you, but it's not, again, like what I was speaking to earlier, this didn't happen to you, this happened to me.
Exactly.
So I know it's uncomfortable, but so was what happened to me. Shit. So is it me trying to tell you this.
Finally working up the courage, right? And secondhand trauma is real.
Yes.
It hurts me to hear from people I love that bad things have happened to them. And I take that hurt and I process it elsewhere. I don't make the person who's coming to me with such courage and bravery process my feelings in that moment. So it's just important. I just think that's important to know.
It is important, because it helps sets up the ones that are on the receiving end, and then also the ones that want to deliver this information to their loved ones and not quite sure how to do it, and then knowing that you can do it, and it's not on you to make them feel good about it or feel comfortable about it. It's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself, and share what you need to share. And you cannot control other people's reactions or responses, but hopefully, they love you. We love you.
We love you too.
We love you.
Those were kind of our pearls of wisdom. I'm out of wisdom.
So, I mean, this has been an episode, y'all.
Yeah, we're we gotta go shake it up. The final thing I did want to share with people, and we will post this again on social media and in the show notes, is that if you are a survivor or the friend or family member of a survivor, and you need help and you don't know where to start, or you're in crisis, there is a national sexual assault hotline that you can call, and the number is 1-800-656-4673. You can also go on RAINN's website and like chat with somebody. You can also text. And all right, well, it's been a journey.
It has been a journey, so we really appreciate y'all sticking through it to the fucking end.
We do.
And yeah, so where can you find us at if you want to share your story?
You can find us at Don't Talk _podcast on Instagram.
Or info at shdon'ttalk.com, where you can email us. You can DM us, email us, whatever you want to do. We would love to hear from you. And this has been a very hard episode to get through. And we are not alone. And that is why it is called Us Too.
Us Too. And you're not alone. And we're here with you.
Always.
And we love you so much.
We love you, and so stick around. We have one more fucking episode.
One more to go.
One more of season 1.
Season 1, and then season 2. We'll talk more about season 2 next time.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Love you.